Hey everybody, excited to be here, being part of Take the Lead. My name is Carter Reum. I'm the co-founder of M13. M13 is a venture platform where we invest in and build our own companies, offices in LA and New York City. And we have a big focus on basically, we built out a platform that helps the companies we invest in execute better, kind of using a platform approach. Yeah, I think the thing for me that makes a great leader is probably thoughtfulness. I think as a leader, you have to realize that whether it's choosing your words carefully, whether it's choosing your actions carefully, all these things matter because everything you do is a cue to people that work with you or for you. And so, I give the example. We all don't have great days, but when I walk into my office, the minute I open up that door, I always walk a little faster, right? Because I want to kind of show people I'm excited to be in the office, things like that. And so I think the key is, never to be calculating, but always to be thoughtful and understanding that if you ask a question, people are going to pick up cues from it. If you speak, people are going to listen to you and take it as authoritative. And so I think it's just a certain thoughtfulness and mindfulness, knowing that you are a leader. And as a leader, you have a responsibility. And with that responsibility needs to come a certain level of thoughtfulness because everything you do will have ramifications, sometimes good, sometimes bad. But if you're a good leader, most of the time they'll be good. And so for me, for example, to give some concrete examples, when it came to COVID-19, I said, I'm going to video call 2 people a day with no agenda, but other than to say hi. Because what I realized is part of what makes me a good leader in the physical setting was that I could kind of talk to people casually, whether that's by the water cooler or walking to get coffee. And I knew I had to replicate that. I knew that, how I asked questions, the way I had to pause between answers in a virtual environment, cues, that things like that. And so I thought to myself, what do I have to do differently in where I'm just a Zoom box? That's different than being in a conference room. And so I think the biggest thing for anybody when it comes to thoughtfulness is be thoughtful, right? Sit down on a Saturday, sit down early one morning or in the evening and say, hey, what can I be better at? What do I know I'm already good at that I can double down on? And then it's like anything, kind of what is measured is kind of managed. Think to yourself, kind of what do you want to focus on? And basically every quarter, I have things as a leader I'm trying to work on, whether those are things that I've self-identified or, a lot of times I pick them up from kind of cultural assessment surveys and things like that. And again, at different moments of time in a journey, you have to have different leadership styles, and therefore you have to be thoughtful about different things very tactically. Yeah, I think for me, I have very strongly held opinions loosely as I tell the team, but I always have opinions, right? There's very little times where I walk into a meeting and I haven't thought about something, or I don't have a thesis, again, that I hold strongly, but I hold it loosely, if that makes sense. I think for me, one of the shifts recently has been really becoming a better listener, and then also really expressing myself through asking questions rather than always asserting my beliefs. So it's a lot more impactful for me if I can get somebody to see what I see potentially, or end up in a better place than where they started by asking questions to them that lead them to the right thought process, that leads them to a better result than me saying, this is how I would think about it. And so one thing, and I also just think in a world we're living in, especially in a digital world, it's just a more engaging leadership style. So I spend a lot more time listening, and I spend a lot more time asking questions. And sometimes it's to get somebody to think more thoughtfully about something that they're presenting or a thought that they might have. And sometimes it's actually just to let the team pick up the cues of what I'm thinking in the question. So a lot of times my team will say to me, oh, Carter, you're really predictable. I actually think that's a great thing, right? Because as a leader, you do want to be predictable, right? You want to show up consistently. One of the things that people want in the workplace is kind of safety. And the worst thing you can have as a leader that kind of is very either mercurial or isn't predictable, because it's much harder to work with or for that person. And so I take that as a compliment when my team says, I know exactly what you're saying, Carter, you're very predictable, then I know I'm doing something right. like in today's world, the world is moving so quickly and the world is so interconnected, right? And so something might happen in real estate or something might happen in healthcare, but it might change how we think about transportation or how we change our daily habits. And so one of the things I've realized is I just need to read a lot of thought leadership. For me, I'm very big on the subconscious brain. So I don't unfortunately have the time to listen to a 30-minute podcast or read a book. I honestly wish I did. And maybe that's just me doing a better job of prioritizing so I can find time. But I try to just read everything for 2 to 4 minutes, because what I'm trying to do is just get it in my subconscious brain, even if I don't absorb it there. And then my brain over time picks up those patterns, and I'll start to see patterns, or I'll start to kind of pick up things that I like. I think one of the dangers in a world where we live, where there's a lot of information, is getting too obsessed with 1 or 2 data points. For me, it's always when I see a pattern of data points, whether it's around leadership or around an investment thesis that I have, but I'm constantly doing it. So rather than being intimidated by not having the time that I would like to spend as much time reading and absorbing information, I think of it as being better to just look at as much stuff, flip every deck for 2 minutes, but I very rarely spend 10 minutes on a deck, or read an article, or I know I'd rather read the book, but at least if I could read the book notes for 5 minutes. And so, and then I think there's times where you have to double down, right? And so whether that's at a certain part of the journey as you're an entrepreneur, for me, it was during the beginning of COVID-19. I realized as an investor and an operator, I'd never been through what I expected at the time to be a recessionary environment, and obviously a global pandemic none of us have been through. And so I realized right away, with enough humility, that I wasn't going to have all the answers, but I could read and get access to some of the best thought leaders on the planet. So the next best thing I could do was I would spend 4 or 5 hours on a Saturday reading thought leadership specific to that. But now, right, I've done less of that because it's at a different part of the journey as it relates to the pandemic. And so I think for me, it kind of ebbs and flows a little bit. I always tell people, do what you say you're going to do and be a good human being. And I promise you, if you do those 2 simple things, it goes so far. It is amazing. My brother and I, our first entrepreneurial company was a liquor company. And people would just constantly say, man, you guys are great. You actually wrote the follow-up email. You actually followed up to close the account. You actually just did what you said you were going to do. The same thing could be said at M13. You know, we've gone from 6 people to 33 people to 11 partners and raised a big fund, and we've launched 5 companies all in 18 months. And people are constantly saying, wow, you guys just execute. But what they really mean is we actually just do what we say we're going to do. And then the second part of it about being a good human being is I really do just believe along the way you need luck. But typically what comes alongside luck is people doing good things for you, right? And all of us, we want to do good things for good people that we know appreciate it. And it's amazing. We've had so many people look out for us in our journey, whether it was people like Richard Branson, including us in his book many, many years ago when my brother and I were delivering alcohol out of the back of our car, to, I could list, hundreds of other examples. And people always say, but how and why? Like, how did you get that person to do that? Or why is this person your mentor? Or why did this person invite you to this conference? And I honestly just always tell people, I think it's because we're good human beings. And it's amazing if you do that with no kind of calculating intentions, how far people will go to help others. Because at the end of the day, we all want to root for each other. We all want each other to win. And so for me, I know I could give some, revolutionary answer, but I don't think you need a revolutionary answer. For me, it's all about kind of keep it simple, stupid, and do what you say you're going to do and be a good human being.